There we go. It's being recorded. I'd just like to introduce myself first and then my team. So I am Cesar Silva. I'm the Director of Research and Program Development at the Immigrant Education Society. So this project is a little bit of a culmination of things that we've been working on with regard to gardens and food, cuisine, and integration here at TIES. With me are my research coordinator, Jenica, and our research assistant, Baya. And before I get to the panelists, if you want to go to the next slide, before we get to the panelists and before we get things started, I think it's important to just acknowledge, the original owners of the land. So in the spirit of respect, reciprocity, and the truth, we honor and acknowledge the Mokinstis and the traditional Treaty 7 territory and oral practices of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Siksika, the Kainai, the Piikani, as well as the Stone Nakota and Tsuut'ina nations. We acknowledge that this territory is home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3, within the historical Northwest Métis homeland. Finally, we acknowledge all nations, Indigenous and non, who live, work, and play on this land and who honor and celebrate this territory. So just to give you guys a little sense of the structure today, so we're going to do a little bit of like the general sort of introductions to the theme of the discussion. After that, we'll get to the real sort of like main part of it, which is the panel discussion with the chefs and academics and our newcomer. And then after that, we'll do some Q&A from the audience, and then we'll wrap things up with some closing remarks. So I'm gonna go to the next slide. Just wanted to mention that this is sort of like this event is part of like an entire series of things that we've been doing over the past 2 years. One of the most recent projects that we've put together was the Newcomer Community Cookbook. This is in partnership with the Alex Community Food Center, who are just down the road from our Forest Lawn location. Basically the Newcomer Community Cookbook celebrates newcomer food and cuisine and culture, and is an opportunity to really sort of get to know some of our clients and really see them in a situation that is very natural in terms of sharing and community building, and that's kind of what we're trying to build on in these series of activities and events. The Newcomer Community Cookbook also builds on a previous project of ours called the Gardens for Refugees and Others Welcomed in Canada, or the GROW project, where we built some community gardens and introduced a lot of TIES' clients in various settlement and language programs to the whole practice of community gardening. Introduced to the concept here in Canada, but although at the same time, we're also tapping into a lot of their current knowledge, all of their existing knowledge and practices in terms of gardening and in terms of farming and growing and interacting and experiencing nature, all in the context of building community. So this is sort of like the next part in that sort of series. So we're really lucky to have a lot of our experts and a lot of the people who are sort of experience, migration and study migration and food and cuisine and work in food and cuisine in that sort of like unified kind of context. Next slide. Just to give you guys a little bit more of an idea as to some of the past work that we've done. We're just going to show you a quick video where our project was featured on the CBC a few years ago. So if you want to play. In a regular day, there's about 75 languages from 75 different cultures and countries. Growing vegetables seems to be like the common language.
Cucumber.
Cucumber. Tomato.
Pumpkin, tomato. Yes, yeah, carrot.
When it's still cold outside, we plant seeds in the classrooms. And then when it warms up a little bit, we have a big day where everybody goes out and replants a lot of those sprouts.
I got my community right here in my school.
The weather different, not easy. In Syria, easy because sunny. And here the weather, maybe in this year, cold too much.
One of the advantages for a program like this is students are able to participate together, share success, and they're able to celebrate. We see a lot of singing and dancing during the first harvest.
Before I come to this school, I can't talk any word English, and now I talk. Many people here now help and see many friends.
We are now make some food for us, cut veggie and cooking. I am here meet many new friends.
I like to meet a new friend. I love the friend. I love to be together, to work like a group. I really love a lot. Yeah.
Social isolation tends to delay, integration. This type of program gives people sort of like a platform to try to connect with new people and put them on that road to building a new community here in Canada. That was a little bit of a quick taste of what we've done in the past and what we're trying to sort of build towards in the future. So a few sort of planned things that have not come to fruition yet, but in the meantime, we're trying to maybe just sort of like open up the conversation and then keep the sort of the discussion going around some of these themes with regard to integration, food, cuisine, gardening, and the experience of nature and the outdoors and community building. We are really, really lucky to have a really interesting panel. We have some chefs who are in the food industry, and then some experts in academics, and a newcomer who has really engaged in and embraced cooking as a way to sort of facilitate her integration into Canada over the past year or so. We have with us Mars Bakani, who is from Village Way Kitchen. And we have Peter Decruz, who is the kitchen supervisor at the University of Calgary. Those are our two chefs. We also have some academics and experts. So Amira Takeuchi from the Workland School of Education. We have Samira Habib, who is from Community Food Centers Canada. And we have our newcomer, who is Kainat, who recently just came from Pakistan to Canada. Just kind of give you a little bit of a quick sort of intro, but I'll let them introduce themselves and give a little bit more of a background to each of them. Maybe let's start with Mars. If you want to just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Mars Bakani. I'm from the Philippines originally. I'm the chef owner of Village Way Kitchen, and I'm also the cafe coordinator of Ethnicity Catering Center for Newcomers. I'm also a present president of the Philippines Culinary Federation in Canada.
Well, thank you, Mars. How about Peter Decruz? Did you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
My name is Peter Decruz. I'm from India, born and brought up in Bombay, and did my culinary graduation from India. When I came here, I joined Fairmont in Banff Spring. I worked there for 8 years. Then I moved to Calgary, worked in Fairmont Palliser, and now I'm working in the University of Calgary right now as a kitchen supervisor. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Peter. Now let's move to the experts. Mewa, did you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Amira Takeuchi. I'm an associate professor at the School of Education at the University of Calgary. And I echo Dr. Suzbat's acknowledgement to the land. And as an educational researcher and educator, I'd like for us to invite us all to acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past that Canada made and through schooling for Indigenous children, and try to move forward in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. And as a researcher, I work both in schools and communities in the issue focusing on refuge, migration, social justice, and learning. And there are lots that we can learn about from gardens and the farms. That's where I connected with the TIES for the amazing project that they were doing, the grow that we just saw. So looking forward to the conversation today.
Thank you so much, Miwa, and thank you for bringing our attention to that issue that us as a society are still trying to wrestle with. But I think it's important for us to recognize it and then continue to wrestle with it and deal with that history. So next, maybe Saima, if you wanted to tell us a little bit about yourself as well. Can we unmute Saima?
Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Samira Habib. I work for a national food justice organization called Community Food Centers Canada, where I run a program that focuses on health promotion across the country. And so this program is offered in 13 different cities across the country and focuses on increasing health outcomes for people who are experiencing chronic illness. I also very happily in Calgary serve on the boards of Fresh Roots, which is a mobile grocery delivery service or a delivery bus in Calgary, as well as the Land of Dreams, which is a refugee farming project. I sit on the advisory board for that. So love food, love gardening, and love everything that has to do with food justice.
Thank you so much, Saima. And finally, we have Kainat. Kainat, did you want to tell us a little bit about yourself? Kainat, you're still muted. Sorry. Can we get her unmuted?
Now, can you hear me? Hi, my name is Kainat Sarwar. I am from Pakistan. And I came here in 2019, December. I have been almost 1 year and 8 months. And I live in Northeast Calgary and I like Calgary. And oh my God. Oh, sorry. Today, I don't know. I have an internet problem.
You're fine. We can hear you fine now. Yep.
Yeah, and I like cooking. So recently I met that person in my school. So I send my all cooking things and they contact me again. And thank you so much for inviting me again. And I appreciate you are appreciating my work in my COVID time. It was very hard time for me. And yeah, thank you so much.
Well, we're really happy you're here with us, Kainat, and really happy that all of you guys are here for the discussion. So moving into discussion, let me just let you guys know we've got a few stages. We have a couple of questions that we'll ask everybody, and then all the panelists will answer. And then after that, we'll focus on their little sort of like groupings that we've kind of put them together in. So we've got the chefs and then the subject matter experts. And then it turns out it's just Kainat. So, and then we'll ask you those questions. Okay, so I'll be facilitating the first set of questions. So this is to everybody. Maybe we can start with the first one. What do you guys think the role of cooking and cuisine play in integration? Just like the big broad question there. Maybe we could start with
You are muted.
So, sorry, can we start with Mars?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Oh, sorry, yeah, I guess I muted myself just as I said the name, so.
So like the question is the integration, right? So first, Center for Newcomers are welcoming newcomers to have a Canadian experience in our kitchen, in ethnicity catering kitchen. So we're encouraging them first to share what kind of food that they can that they're enjoying back home, right? So that they can feel welcome and they can feel that they're at home, and also to gain motivations that they can express themselves using their food. So that we also telling them that as an old immigrant and the Canadians are open and embracing the new food or other food that they can serve us, that we are open with other flavors, and also that after doing that, we are also encouraging them or teaching them the Canadian way of cooking or working in the kitchen environment. This includes the cooking methods, the different temperature of food to serve, the holding temperatures, fridge and freezer temperature, and kitchen safety, and the most important are hygiene.
Thanks for that, Mars. It's a really interesting kind of like channel in terms of expressing your sort of like ethnic background, and it kind of combining together into like a purely Canadian product. Maybe can I turn to Miwa with the question? How about, so what do you think cooking and cuisine play in the whole process of integration?
Yeah, I'm an immigrant myself, and I felt the sense of displacement growing up in Japan as a queer person. So in Japan, still the same-sex marriage is not yet accepted, and there is a strong social stigma attached to being gay or lesbian or transgender. So in 2004, when the Canada legalized same-sex marriage, that's when I moved to Canada. And this week is a Pride Week in Calgary, so happy Pride to everyone. And I think food and cuisine goes beyond just food and cuisine. I think Saima will elaborate more when she talks about it. And food connects us all, and food can create a safe space for being who we are. So it plays a key role for us to be who we are as an immigrant. Because I remember that after I came to Canada as an immigrant, I started to move away from one custom that I embodied. My body knows so well. Is when I eat meal, I was growing up in a culture that I say, itadakimasu. That's the way I cannot really translate in English. It's a way to thank for the life that we take through food, and also to really thank for those people who cook or prepared meal for us, or who taught the people who actually prepared the meal for us. So eating is our way to connect with other people or others. It could be others, could be like plants, others could be mushrooms, others could be meats, but others could be those who prepare the food, or others could be those ancestors who really succeeded those recipes for us, or the ways to cook for us. So, but being an immigrant and trying to be integrated in the society, we try to erase some of the things that are not mainstream. So I started to not say itadakimasu in public because I don't want to seem as weird. Or my partner who's a Canadian doesn't really grow up with the custom like me. So to create the integrative space is to create a space for accepting who we are as a whole person. And the food can play a huge role for that and create a ripple effect in society for newcomer integration, I think.
Thank you, Miwa. That's really some really important points that you bring up. The universality of eating and sharing food together, and also thank you for bringing up the fact that this is Pride Week. And speaking of universality, I mean, and inclusiveness. Really, that's sort of the challenge, right? In terms of understanding, the role that meal taking and partaking in food brings, is that it could be a channel to bring people together and could be a real channel to bring diverse people of diverse backgrounds together, no matter what your identity is. Maybe let's go to Kainat, who has a recent experience of cuisine and food as a way to integrate. So can you tell us, Kainat, what you think the role of cooking and cuisine play in integration?
Sorry, can you please repeat your question? Your voice is breaking. I don't know.
Oh, sorry. Can you tell us what role food and cuisine played in your settlement and integration in the process of you sort of adjusting to Canada?
Yeah, when I came here, I don't have any friend and I live alone. So I was starting cooking. It's helped me a lot to time pass, a good time pass. When I came here, I can't cook anything, so I start with watching videos, cooking videos on YouTube, and I learned how to cook. And then I try some dishes. First, when I start, it was very difficult because before I don't know how to cook. So yeah, it was a very good experience for me. I was learning actually from YouTube, and YouTube is a very good helper for me.
That's pretty incredible that you just picked it up from online, and just during the course of your experience here in Canada, and you shared with us some of the pictures of your dishes, and they look wonderful and look really delicious too. So quite an achievement going from zero to becoming a cook. Speaking of cooks, maybe let's move to Peter Decruz. Can you tell us a little bit about integration and what you think about integration and cuisine and food?
Food plays a very important role in my life personally, because food for me is more like, it's like loving my own mother. Like if you love your own food, that means you love your own motherland, the place that you come from, and you're totally connected to your motherland and your own mother, because she's the first chef in your life whom you are connected. You fall in love with the food because of your mom. So if you hate your mom, you hate eating as well. So coming here to Canada, I bring my tradition from India, and I bought my cuisine, what I learned from the other chefs and from my mom, from my grandmom, from my friend's mother, because I love eating food. That's why I'm in this thing, because for me, cuisine, like nobody can say that I hate eating. They love eating. And for me, cooking is maybe the only profession where you use all your 5 senses. Very rarely you'll find any other cuisine or any other profession that use all your 5 senses, even your 6th sense too. And when I came here, it was very difficult for me to adjust in this environment. When I came to Banff, it's an isolated area, isolated place, but only one thing that connected with me and with my chef and anyone else I meet was food. No matter what country they come from, what place they come from, knowing their food, what they cook, tasting their food, we know what we speak only one language. It's called about food. and cuisine, whichever country they come from. And that helped me and them to connect. So when I came, I wanted to learn about Canadian cuisine because they don't teach anywhere in Canada, in anywhere in world, what is the Canadian cuisine. Some say poutine, some say this, but I wanted to learn real cuisine of here. So I had a native friend, he was from Edmonton. So through that person, I loved a real rustic Canadian cuisine, like what they cook. It's not more about like spices, it's all about simple cooking and how they do. So through that, I connected with them, and it helps. Food brings the world together. Like food can be a peacemaker in any community. Yeah, that's what I think the cuisine does help to connect people rather than any other thing.
Nice to some of our first exposures to different cultures is through their cuisine and through foods, visiting a really interesting kind of ethnic restaurant. Sometimes it sort of opens up the door to an entire cultural experience. And finally, Saima, if you want to share your thoughts on the topic.
Yeah, I really appreciate, Peter, what you said about like mother's memory, and like that sort of our first experience of food is through our parents and the people who take care of us. When you asked this question, Cesar, I thought of two stories. So I was born in Canada, but I was born 10 months after my mother moved here from Pakistan. I was born in the end of 89, and she moved in the beginning of 89. And back then, it was very difficult to find any kind of ingredient. There was no aisle in Superstore where you could get spices. And so often she would have to improvise and make do with ingredients that were there. And she would make a chaat, which is kind of like a mixture of different vegetables and spices and chickpeas and potatoes. And you usually have a little bit of crunch and then some tamarind chutney on top. And the crunchy bits that she would use in Pakistan, she couldn't find here. So instead, she would sprinkle Rice Krispies on top of this chaat. And so that's one of my memories growing up is this sort of that for her, cooking and her process of integration was about improvising and learning to make do with the ingredients that she had here. And then I have another memory as well, which is that once a month we always ate Pakistani food, but once a month she would do Western food, and it was always pizza and lemonade. And so she'd make the pizza from scratch and she'd make lemonade. And that was another piece of her integration journey, was I think learning about and trying foods that she didn't grow up with. And I think both of those pieces are really part of, or what I witnessed in my mother, part of her newcomer experience was learning to make do with what she had, but still replicating those recipes from back home. And then finding out kind of the things that she had missed out on by growing up in a country where there's, very specific regional foods, but not necessarily at that time, there wasn't a lot of world cuisine. Yeah, those are very personal stories, but I do agree with Miwa around sort of that universality of food and the power of food to transform communities and bring people together. And I think that cooking is an incredible love language. And so when we're able to connect with people, even if it's not with words, if it's through the action of cooking a meal for someone else, it creates a sense of connection. And that's really valuable, especially in the process of coming to a new place and not knowing anybody and trying to build connection in community.
Thank you so much for that. Maybe just building on that, I know I didn't send this question to you guys in advance, but maybe just posing it to all of you guys, and anybody can kind of answer. Like, what more can we as a community do to really take advantage of like the whole experience of food and eating and cuisine to strengthen these bonds, between different members of the community? What more can we do as a community to kind of look at the pathway, or look at food and cuisine and eating as a channel to strengthen those bonds between each other? Anybody can answer. Anybody have any thoughts on that? Miwa?
Sure, I can start and people can build on to that. So one of the very significance, there are lots of the significance, but one of them for the GROW program is that it created the sense of belonging and a sense of connectedness through the growing food through the garden. And looking at the Calgary's map, and there is a University of Calgary researcher, Miho Rowan-Trudeau, and her colleagues did a study. And they took a look at the different neighborhoods of the Calgary. And what they found was the number of community gardens are not necessarily proportionally placed in all across Calgary. So looking at the northwest and the southwest, there are more of the community gardens where people can socialize and come together, whereas northeast and the southeast, the number significantly decreases. So if there is a way that the community organizations or like grassroots initiatives can take on to increase the number of those initiatives in the area where the lots of refugee and immigrants settle, probably we can create a strength and a tie among those newcomers through food or growing food. So that's where I can leave my ideas, but I can expand more as needed.
Maybe if you want to say something, maybe, because like we've got like the unmuting kind of controlled by Baya. So if you want to raise your hand and then Baya can kind of see and they can unmute you if you want to say something.
I think that I'm able now to unmute myself, but
oh, okay.
Yeah, so just to build on that a little bit, and Cesar, I'm sure like you were very involved with the work being done at the Alex Community Food Center. So you're very familiar with, I think, the importance of spaces for people to connect and share their food traditions. And that's very valuable, especially in communities where we find ourselves, living with beside neighbors who maybe we don't share food traditions with. And I think that it's very powerful when we can create places for people to gather and share food. I agree with Miwa, the importance of community gardens as a space for people to build bonds and develop relationships, and the things that you can learn in a community garden or in any kind of setting. The farm I work at, and I'm going to tell another story, but the urban farm that they sit on the advisory board for, the Land of Dreams. I was recently volunteering and found out that the Congolese women don't just eat the squash plant, they use the leaves of the squash and they cook the leaves of the squash. And I found like that learning people's food traditions makes me feel not just closer to the people that I'm talking to in that moment, but it also helps me to feel connected to that culture and learn more about the traditions. And so I think when we have places for people to learn about, whether it's the cooking traditions or the growing traditions, it's really valuable to create those bonds.
Yeah, like you mentioned, Simon, it was really interesting through the project that we were doing with the Alex and Grow. It was incredible to see like these sort of like, all these different ideas about, how to plant and how to treat the, different, vegetables and how to use them and things like that. And, just coming together in that space. And then connecting to the local community as well. Many of our clients at TIES ended up, taking some programming from the Alex just because they got exposed to the kitchen and they got exposed to that place as another venue for meeting people. When you bring people together, all these wonderful things start happening. Does anybody else have any other thoughts on that? Before we go on to the next segment? Yep. Peter? Peter's still muted.
Now you can hear me? Okay. Yeah, I don't know how will this be related to you guys, but in BAF every year, they started in 2011. I don't know, is it still continuing? The mayor in that town, she started a food festival, international food festival at that time, and we used to BAF Spring in coordinated with BAF Creativity Center and BAF Spring Hotel. So they had a stall, and everybody, like whoever wants to like get that stall, they pay $350 just to put their own stall, and they bring their own cuisine from. We had a Filipino, we have an Indonesian, Vietnamese. So they come and they bring the food, and that becomes every year on a summer, because they get the tourist, as well as we have the people from the BAF who come from outside BAF, from Ontario or from other part of Canada or world. They come to work over there. So they used to come, and it used to be a very fulfilling to go and to the stall of Indonesia or in Vietnamese, and then they interact, and it's a very good thing. It used to be for 2-3 days, like Friday, Saturday, Sunday. It was a good festival time, international food festival organized by BAF and the BAF Spring Hotel. Yeah. So that's just wanted to share that.
Yeah, thank you for that, Peter. I'm going to turn it over now to Baya, who's going to ask some specific questions just to the chefs, just to Peter and Mars. So we'll move on to the focus questions to the different groups. So Baya, if you wanna.
Sorry.
Did I get cut off again? Okay, no, sorry, I said Baya, do you want to jump in?
Anyways, all right, so now it's time to get specific to the chef. So this is just specifically for our chefs to answer. So one of our first questions here for you guys is, how important is authenticity to you when preparing and presenting cultural cuisine to the Canadian community? And any of you can just start.
Okay, I go ahead. Yeah. So at first, for me, it's very important to serve an authentic meal. But by doing it when I was in Stampede Casino during that time, especially if I'm making adobo and caldereta, and my executive chefs always told me that the flavor is so strong, right? And it's not for Canadian palate. So I have to have to lessen the spices and herbs and some of our some of the ingredients, just to make it so that the Canadian can still enjoy it. So now it's like I just like tweak everything, make like a little bit fusion of it. Right, and also I'm avoiding serving Canadians the carcass, the internal organs of the carcass, right? Because they always get shocked if I serve them like our dinuguan, right? And the head of the roast pork. They like our cuisine, like the pancit, the adobo, spring roll, and the lechon without the head, without showing them the head. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that can be very tough, right? One time I was actually like in my English class, and basically my teacher, we were having a potluck, and all the students brought like very, very Filipino foods. And then one of my friends brought in dinuguan. So for those that don't know, dinuguan is basically pig's blood, right? So it's pig's blood. And then my teacher, she looked at us and was like, what is this? And then we were like, you can just try it. And then she tried it and she ended up liking it. And she actually asked for more. So that was very interesting. What about you, Peter? Did you have any kind of experience or would like to add on to that question? Yeah, I can unmute.
I did. I had a lot of experience like that because in India the food are very spicy. So always the complaint is some people they complain about the smell because it's so pungent because of the spice and the taste. It's spicy. So I do had many times to tone down the spice, sometimes to add sugar in it. But everybody, no matter which country they come from, they always like butter chicken. But butter chicken because it's sweet and like not that spicy, sweet and sour. So whether you are a Chinese or Canadian, they tend to like it. So mostly like those kind of food. Then I started changing my recipes to that. But if you really want to enjoy the authentic Indian food, you should try with the real spice and the real method of cooking, because without that the real soul of the cooking goes away. Like so many cuisine, like the Filipino cuisine, because I sometimes participate in a prayer group, a Filipino prayer group. When they bring food, or it's like all their cultural food and different flavors. Like sometimes I see a different food which I have never tasted, but it's so beautiful to see what they taste. But that connects me with those people, how to understand their culture and what is their food. And mostly some people, they are not from the seaside area, but they tend not to love seafood. But some community, they are from the seaside area, they like fresh fish, fresh everything. So you understand like what community they come from. But it really, like when I came to Canada, it always was a problem with me to adjust with the taste bud of Canadians. It was really a problem for me. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. So I guess for a follow-up question, because you both talked about preparing your own cuisines and how difficult it is to find the right taste to cater to everyone. So do you prepare more of your culture's cuisine with your families, or do you notice that your cooking style within your families have changed?
Yep. Hi, Bea. So for me, to be honest with you, I'm not the one who's cooking for the family for daily meal, right? Because I'm working like more than 8 hours already here at Newcomers. Then I have to go to my own kitchen to do some prep for my caterings, some orders. So they're not expecting me to cook for them anymore. So the wives always cook for the family. But fortunately or unfortunately for me, every time she asks me how's the food, I always say good, because I don't want to end up sleeping in the garage, right? So basically, I'm just like except in special occasion now.
Yeah, maybe for special occasions you can have a say in what cuisines are prepared. What
Yeah,
about you,
but
Peter?
sorry, Bea, but unfortunately for me now, they know that I have an event place catering. They always say, let Mars cater for our family meal or family food. So I'm obligated to cook for them now.
It's a different responsibility.
Yeah.
And what about you, Peter?
Yeah, for me, like sometimes my wife, she cooks the food at home, or sometimes I cook, because it depends like who is off on that day. But my children, they love both Indian food and Canadian food. In Canadian food, they only like fries and fried chicken. That's it. But the rest of the food they don't appreciate. But they're more into Indian cuisine, because that's how I brought them up from the childhood, and that's what they like. So it was not a problem for me to integrate the Indian cuisine for them.
That's really good. That's really good that your children still appreciate your kind of culture cuisine, which is something that's super important. I know my dad, when I told him that I'm gonna stop eating pork, he was struggling with trying to prepare meals for me, and he had to alter a lot of the Filipino cuisines because for some reason a lot of Filipino cuisines are very pork focused. So then he had to like alternate it to chicken, to beef, and he was just struggling the whole time. And for the next question, what kind of challenges did you guys face as an immigrant chef? So how was your history, your story coming up here? And what kind of challenges did you face with that?
Okay. For me, Bea is the language barrier. Yeah. So because English is not my first language, I'm more on Tagalog. Then secondly is how to be a Canadian chef, because all the certificate that I get in the Philippines and training is not counted here. So one time I gave my certificate to my executive chef. He threw it in the garbage. Said that's not what he said is I can't remember the exact word what he said, but it's not counted here. So I said, how to become you, right? I said, quit your other job at the Olive Italian restaurant and concentrate on the kitchen. So that's the first one, is to how to become a certified Canadian chef. Then while you're doing your apprenticeship, then how will you get the funds? How to pay your bills while you're doing your culinary schools? Then second is other one is where to go to school. Luckily that I have the executive chef who guided me to fulfill my dreams. And then I have to start from the bottom as a prep cook and dishwasher.
Yeah, that sounds very difficult. I'm sorry you had to go through the beginning of that, but now, I mean, it builds character and you're an amazing chef. What about you, Peter?
Yeah, for me, I did my schooling regarding the graduation in hospitality administration from India, from Bombay. So I was working there as a sous chef over there, and I did rise up to that. But there is always not much growth. So I tried to look for somewhere else because I wanted to experience the international cuisine as well. Because in India, whatever international cuisine is there, so they teach it according to the Indians' perspective. So I came here and I learned, but I joined here as a second cook in Fairmont, Banff Spring. I had to struggle a lot. Took me almost 3 years to get to the supervisor level. And just because I have already done the cooking, I was able to get to that supervisor, but to go more ahead, they wanted me to have the papers, the certified papers, as Mars already said. So for that, I already had my hours, like 6,000 hours, what I need. So I challenged the Red Seal in 2013, and I got my Red Seal. So through that, because of that, I can get job anywhere. And if I want to go more into another level to get executive chef, I can grow anytime. So it was difficult because of the language, and because here, whatever I did in India, it doesn't count according to the Canadian thing. Then so I need a Canadian certificate. So I had to redo my studies, but I didn't have to go through the schooling. I straight away I challenged the Red Seal because of the hours I did, and I was already a second cook at that time.
Awesome. See, so yeah, it just goes to show that there's a lot of different ways that you can really take the Red Seal certification. You can challenge it. You can go to school. There's a lot of different ways that aspiring chefs can fully integrate into the community and become chefs in Canada. So I guess for my final question for you guys, what would you say to aspiring chef? What kind of advice can you give them? Yeah.
Okay, for me, the way I do it, I become a sponge. I take all the style, their technique, different chefs that I work with. So I take all their technique and how do they cook the food. Then when I get my Red Seal, I make my own technique. Then remove all the bad technique that I learned. Then always study, read the culinary book. The only thing that I only read is culinary book or magazine. If you give me any book, I will not read it. Then I always put your head that you're not the best chef. You always learn from other people, even though it's the people who's just selling mango on the street. and always love the most important person in the kitchen, which is the dishwasher. Not you as the kitchen manager or the executive chef, you're not the most important, but the dishwasher.
Awesome. What about you, Peter?
For me, this is one of the best profession I could choose, and there are many profession who pay high paying profession, but this one you will not you will not go hungry. You will always have food for you. This will always have food for you and your family. Even in COVID time, you might see the industry has been hit, but people cannot live without food. They need food. So chef will always be needed. Even when we come out of pandemic, there will be a boom in this industry, and there is a struggle in this industry. You have to struggle. But it's worth struggling, because when you make food and other people they eat, and when you see the satisfaction on their face, it's a very soul touching. Because see, I compare myself next to a doctor. When I ask the doctor, is this medicine good for me? Is this medicine will do an effect? But when a chef cooks, nobody asks the question, because they trust the chef. A chef is just like a doctor and can be a person whom you get very intimate with tasting the food. So when you want to become a chef, I would say just love the food. Just don't do any shortcuts. Oh, I just want to make a shortcut stuff. I don't care about how. When you put all your love into the dish, that person who eats it, that person will love. And as Mars already said, you should read, and read. And this profession is just like being a doctor and a lawyer. No matter how much you know, you still don't know much. You have to learn all your life, because you can learn from anyone else. Even a person who is a second cook, even if you're an executive chef, you will still learn one technique from a second cook, which will help you to grow more in your life. Yeah, that's it.
That was very well said. Thank you so much to Chef Mars and Chef Peter Decruz. All right, so now I think we are ready to move on to Jen and Kainat. I will spotlight you guys.
Okay, am I unmuted? Okay, sorry. Hi, Kainat. So you mentioned in your introduction that you moved here by yourself near the start of the pandemic.
Yes.
I just want to ask you, what challenges did you experience when you first moved here in Canada?
Yeah, when I was came here, I faced lots of difficulties because first of all, the weather I can't accept. And even when I was before I was in Montreal, there was weather is not too cold like Calgary weather. But when I was came here in January, that time their weather was -40, and I was shocked. And that time I was very sick for 2-3 months, and after that I live with I find a home with a Pakistani family, so I don't feel like not much alone, but they are not my family. But yeah, I was missing my family, and all the time I was crying and depressed. Then I was just thinking to start cooking, and I watch videos on YouTube. Then I start learn cooking and things, because that time I don't know anyone in Calgary. So I thought this is a good way to like busy busy myself in these things. So I start last year, but unfortunately that in July a knife is falling on my feet, and my feet was cut, and I got 10 stitches. And again I was on bed for 1 month. then it was very difficult for me, because when I was came here, I was only 21, and that time I was always scared and I was crying and I miss my mother and I can't come back, come back. So yeah, it was very difficult for me, but cooking was very helpful me, and that I spent lots of time in my kitchen. Then I moved a separate place. Then I start properly cooking and learning lots of things. Now I can cook everything like Western food and Pakistani and Indian food.
Oh, yeah, I can't imagine moving here right in the dead of winter in -40 weather, and then at the start of the pandemic. Like, that's just so overwhelming, and definitely can make you feel even more isolated. So have you felt any like impacts from the COVID pandemic on settling in Canada?
Yeah, when I was came here that time, not this happened, but after 2 months, that pandemic start.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, and I think a lot of people can relate also that they turn to cooking as a way to keep busy throughout the pandemic. I know I definitely started cooking a lot of other cultural dishes. So yeah, it's good. Okay, so since you learned how to cook on your own from watching various YouTube videos, do you feel like your cooking here is the same as what your family cooked back at home in Pakistan?
Yeah, I can cook now. Everything same like my mother.
Yeah, okay. And so you try to make what your mother would cook?
Yeah, I cook not I don't like so much spicy things because my stomach is hurting sometimes. So I cook like a desi food, but not like too much spicy. But sometimes I cook pasta and pizza and grilled chicken and these things. And mostly I eat vegetables.
Okay. So do you think if you cooked for your family, if you cooked them like different Western dishes, do you think they would enjoy that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes I cook something and I click a picture and send my mother and my brother.
Oh, yeah. And they're like, oh, what's that? I want to eat that.
Yeah.
So what is your favorite dish to make that's from a different culture?
Pasta.
Pasta, yeah. Have you been out to any like Italian restaurants?
No, I never tried, but maybe in future I will try.
Yeah, when the pandemic is not as bad anymore.
Yeah,
it would be good to try out many different cultural restaurants.
Yeah.
Okay, so those are all the questions. Oh,
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I try lots of cultured teas or coffee.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, but not food.
Yeah. Well, eventually you'll have the chance to try out different foods, because there are a lot of great restaurants in the city in Calgary.
Yeah.
And then maybe those dishes you try will inspire you to try to make them at home, since you're interested in cooking a lot. Okay, so those are all the questions I have for you, and thank you so much for joining us today. And I'll turn it over to Cesar again.
Thanks so much, Jen. We're going to switch back to Saima and Miwa. If I could ask this question to you, so a little bit more bigger picture here. In general, what do you guys think are the issues or the key issues that newcomers face with regard to food and food security? If you guys can kind of share a few of your thoughts with regard to that. Either of you, if you want to start things off. So what are some of the issues that newcomers face with regard to food and food security? Looks like Sima's unmuted, so if you want to kick things off.
Yeah. So I think there's a few kind of key issues. The first is just availability of ingredients and food in communities that people settle in. Obviously, you know, it's gotten better over the years, but certainly in larger cities, it's better. In smaller towns or even a small city like Red Deer wouldn't have the same kind of variety of ingredients. And so accessibility to ingredients is a very logical one. I think that there are also some underlying structures that make it difficult for newcomers with regards to their culinary traditions and even just settling in and having a relationship with food here. And I think a big one is when you're new to a country, so much of your life is focused on survival. And so it's a little bit more difficult to have time to prepare food, for example, if you're working a lot, if you're dealing with precarious income from multiple sources, juggling jobs, juggling family, trying to learn a language. It's just a lot. And so it can be difficult to make time for food in the same way that perhaps you made time for food in your home country. I think too that food traditions are very different, and the culture around food in Canada is really different. It's very on the go. We live in a very busy culture that tells us that we need to be working all the time and hustling all the time and going all the time. And so those times to sit back and enjoy meals, which I know that that's a huge value in my culture. It's very difficult to have that same level of appreciation around food, because our culture is built in a way that doesn't necessarily appreciate food. And then, from a health perspective, I think a big struggle for newcomers is, to an extent, culture shock when it comes to hyper processed foods and the mass availability of really processed foods that lead to poor health outcomes. I know, for example, in the South Asian community, in my community, rates of diabetes in South Asian community is much higher, and it specifically here in Canada, where the accessibility to ultra processed food is really, it's easy to get it. It's especially when you're on the go and you're working multiple jobs, sometimes you just have to take a snack and run to the next bit of work. And so there are a lot of barriers and a lot of issues that newcomers have to contend with as they're trying to settle into a new country and do so many other things.
Yeah, I think it really limits the choices when you're working a precarious job and you're compelled to having to eat, more sort of local processed sort of cuisine. And then there's that health impact, and there's the time, and then you lose the opportunity to eat together. Everybody eats separately and stuff like that. The experiences my family went through when I was growing up. And then you mentioned also now you can go to Superstore. I'm Filipino. And you can go to Superstore and you can find Filipino ingredients. I remember as a kid having to drive across the city to get ingredients that my parents wanted in the food that they had to put in, and they had to pay so much for some of those ingredients, and they had to make compromises too, because they weren't exactly the Filipino ingredients. They were, Korean ingredients or something like that. It was pretty interesting. And I was also speaking of the cost to try to maintain your diet. I also lived in Australia, when I was doing my graduate studies, and I remember trying to buy a longanisa. I bought two. Longanisa is this Filipino breakfast sausage, right? And I bought 2 packages, and I just sort of grabbed them because I was just used to them being so cheap. And I had to pay something like $15 for those 2 packages. So it was just a little bit of that sort of shock, right? And the compromises that come from being of precarious income and having to sacrifice wanting to buy the longanisa, for example, and having to buy spam or something like that, or other types of sausages as well. So absolutely, I think. Miwa, your thoughts on the issue of food security for newcomers and what they face with regard to that?
Okay, great. Thank you. I think the COVID-19 pandemic really exacerbated the food access in the community. So I think we should be mindful of the big picture, what's going on right now and what will happen in the future. So the food security will going to be a really significant issue for any society. The sign of hope is that there were some grassroots initiatives to really address the food security. As Saima mentions, Fresh Root has been doing a great job to address the food desert issues in Calgary, or the teachers organized grassroots initiative to provide food for those families who are struggling with food. And chefs, local chefs also organize a grassroots initiatives to support that. But I think that kind of grassroots efforts should be also supported in order to make it sustainable. So I think that's one definitely an issue. And going back to the issue of integration and the sense of belongings, as someone who works in the school settings, I've witnessed many school children coming from refugee immigrant background or indigenous background tend to hide what their families eat at home. There is a social stigma attached to certain food, unfortunately. So unless we change that stigma, that's reproduced through schools or through hospitals, for example, those institutions, we cannot really make the, as Saima says, that to create the culture for health. And the Peter mentioned that the food for many immigrant communities are medicines, and the indigenous communities treat them as medicines. So how can we honor their cultures? Then the wisdom that they bring is also another bigger issue, I think.
So what do you guys think we can do as a community to try to address some of these issues? I know you mentioned there's some great sort of grassroots efforts, but then these grassroots efforts need that sort of like support from other places, i.e. maybe funding from governments or different levels of governments and things like that. So I mean, recognizing that sort of environment, what are some of the things that we as a community can do or should do to try to approach some of these issues that we're facing? To anybody.
So in the work that I do, I think that there's kind of two approaches. There's a community approach, and then there's a structural approach. And the structures, are dependent on who's in power. So I think it's very important to vote, and that's especially as people who have the privilege of citizenship. It's especially important to vote and make sure that that progressive policy is put in place to support newcomer integration and to support just fair food systems for everybody. So that's at a structural level very important. I also think because we know that people who are newcomers are more likely to struggle with food insecurity and not access places like food banks. We need to build community-based alternatives or create solutions in community that are perhaps not that it's shameful to access a food bank, but there is stigma attached to it. So we need to more closely examine how we can destigmatize these places for people who are struggling with food insecurity and are newcomers. And then I think, that we have so much wisdom in the newcomer community that Canadians should be learning from in terms of building cultures around food and sharing and community, around growing traditions, around using all the it made me so sad to hear that, the authenticity, Mars, when you mentioned that you don't include the organ meats. Well, we should be eating the organ meats. We should be eating all the parts of the animal. And so there's some very useful wisdom that comes with being a newcomer and bringing traditions over. And so I think that super valuable for us to be listening and learning, and integration is a piece of it, but also how do we keep those traditions that have, you know, traveled all this way and learn from them.
I think that's a really interesting point. That's a great point, because oftentimes, especially like us, we're in settlement agencies, and often we're concerned with, how to inform newcomers about, Canadian systems and, Canadian practices and Canadian culture and things like that. But at the same time, Canadian culture and Canadian society could also really benefit from learning from a lot of that wisdom. Like, for example, eating the different parts, eating the head of the fish, for example, right? Like, the eyes are delicious, right? Like, different parts of the animal. Although I think some grocery stores are becoming wise to that. Like, I remember my mom used to tell me that before she could come and ask for like the throwaway bits of the chicken and then of the meat. Now they're actually getting packaged and getting sold as well. So there's a little bit of that change, I think, but we're kind of we can do more to just really tap into to the knowledge of the people who are coming to us as a community, right? So this is also community knowledge that's kind of getting plugged in that we need to take advantage of. How about your thoughts, Miwa, on that? Is Miwa muted still?
Great, yeah. And also, could you make me the co-host, Jen? Thank you. So I'd like to share my screen briefly, because as an educator, I love hearing from children. And this is an ongoing project with TIES, but we are collecting some voices from the families who attended the GROW program in the past. And these children drew what the future dream neighborhood would look like after the pandemic. If you look at them, what do you see? What do you notice? What they want? It's a little bit blurry. It has to be done through Zoom because of the pandemic. So a little bit blurry, but still the image is quite colorful. So you can probably see lots of things. And feel free to put your thoughts in the chat room as well. One thing that stood out to me from their image was that, and this is a representation of many children as well, that they drew some of the plants, as you can see here in the green. And some of them drew it's a house, and it's the house that reminds of their home. So this was a Syrian refugee family, used to be a farmer. And the child said that I loved milking the cow. My mom brought me every kind of milk every morning, and my grandmother's milk was the best. And we loved eating eggs from the chicken at our farm. That's what she told me. And such strong sense of connection to the land and such strong connection to food was lost for those families after they immigrated to Canada. And I'd like to show another photo. This is a photo from Mohammed El-Dahar and Nahima Mohammed, Syrian refugee farmers who has been growing the vegetables with traditional ways of farming. So going back to Saima's points about intergenerational wisdom that these families have, they said that they don't use any pesticide or herbicide, but they are growing foods and vegetables that are significant for Arabic communities here in Calgary. This is chickpeas. And this is bakari in Arabic. Am I pronouncing it right? Probably not, but bakari. And this is Arabic zucchini kuza. But one of the challenges for them is that seeing their roles to be independent farmer was a long and tough one. There is no almost structural support for them to really maximize their intergenerational wisdom that we all will benefit from. So if we have more support for them to maximize their wealth of knowledge that they have to contribute to the healthy Canadian society, I think we will really can move towards more food justice society. And so that's something that we can collectively do. Hopefully, I saw Christy Peters here in the list, the city of Calgary. Hopefully they can create some system where those refugee farmers or immigrant farmers can maximize their wisdom and really serve for the communities with a culturally significant food. That would really go a long way from the children's education perspective to immigrants or refugees' health perspectives. So yeah, I'll stop there.
I think that's a great point you make, Miwa, particularly about farmers' knowledge. If you're a farmer from another country and you come to Canada, especially to a city, really the assumption is that that knowledge needs to be set aside. You need to get a new career. You need to learn new skills. You need to find a new sort of channel for in terms of livelihood. To a certain degree, you kind of have to find a job in the city to survive, and that's what a lot of people do. But then really the setting aside of a lot of that knowledge is to the detriment of our communities. I think as people who have input into the community, like the TIES and Center for Newcomers and CCIS, and I think it's important also to really, like you said, look at building some of those structures where this sort of like knowledge that they bring to us can be fully expressed and fully utilized and fully plugged into the development and the improvement of our communities. So yeah, thank you so much, you guys, and thank you so much to the rest of my panelists. We're in the Q&A stage now, and I think Baya was sending some reminders to everybody to just type in your question in the chat, and then we'll sort of read them out to the panelists. Do we have questions already, Baya, or maybe, okay, actually, before we get to the questions, maybe if our panelists have any final thoughts that they want to share, we'll give them the opportunity to do that. Maybe we'll go to, maybe Mars, do you have, I'll just kind of name you guys individually. That way it's easier to kind of do the unmuting. Mars, did you have any kind of final thoughts to share with everybody before we get to the Q&A?
I'd just like to thank you guys for having me here and share my input to you.
Thank you for coming, and thank you for gracing us with your presence as well. Peter, final thoughts?
Thank you for inviting me. It's a very fruitful to learn that so many people are like-minded about cuisine and food. Or just because food is like a second nature to us, we don't care about eating, we don't care about food. But some community around the world, they love food. Is food kind of a worship for them? It's a gift from God. So what I personally believe, the new generation, like it should be integrated from the childhood, from the basic, that they should love the natural food rather than the ready-made food. Because if we integrate the natural food, the children will have love for the vegetables, they will have love for the nature and the food that we grow, rather than they will become all ready-made food the corporation are cooking. And for me, cooking is kind of a stress reliever. Whenever I'm in stress, I go into the kitchen and start cooking something. It is a kind of a stress reliever, and it helps me to divert my mind to something else. And for me, it's like kind of food is connection to my own motherland and to my own mother. That's what I feel like. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Peter. Kainat, any final thoughts that you want to share?
Yeah, thank you so much for inviting, and I agreed with Peter. Yeah, when I also, when I feel stressed and feel depressed. So I go to kitchen and cook something. And thank you so much for everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Likewise, thank you, Kainat. Miwa, final thoughts?
Yeah, I echo everyone's gratitude. Thank you so much for having me here. And I think, as Peter said, with the like-minded people, I think we can move towards a more hopeful future for food justice. So looking forward to our work together.
And finally, Saima.
Yeah, like everybody else, I'm excited to have been a part of the panel and also to have been able to hear everybody speak and share their stories. I feel similarly. I think that there's a lot of really amazing work that TIES is doing, and I got to witness the filming in action when you were making the video series, and I'm just very, very supportive of the work you do, and thank you for doing this work in the community and being so aware of the importance of food and food justice.
Speaking of those videos, actually, I just wanted to bring everybody's attention. He was here earlier. Our videographer is here, Steve Chin. I don't know if he still is. Is he gone? He was here earlier anyway, but yeah, like during that time we were filming that, Steve, so he was here as well. So yeah, thank you guys as well. So yeah, let's turn to the Q&A. Maybe I'll turn it over to Baya to have a look at the questions that are there, and then and just relay them to the panel.
Yeah, so we have actually quite a few questions here, really, really good questions. I'm just going to divide them first with Kainat's questions, and then I'm going to go to the newcomers question, then I'm going to go to the chef's question. All right, so Kainat, you're up first. So the question that we have for you is, what is your favorite cuisine?
What?
What is your favorite cuisine? So your favorite meal or dish?
Usually I like biryani and I like pasta. And today I'm thinking to cook pasta.
That's good. I wish that we all had an opportunity to share it, but soon. So the next question that we actually have for you is, do you consider being a chef as your future career?
I'm not thinking about to make a chef in future, but maybe.
Maybe. There's a possibility.
Yeah.
There is a chance.
Yes. All right, awesome. Thank you, Kainat. Okay, so now we're moving into the I'll go with the academics. So for Saima, we have a question here. Can I have more information on food and how we can access the service, and further details and contact information for food you mentioned? So I think they're talking about the community food center that you were talking about earlier. I think they want you to expand a little bit more. If I'm wrong, whoever sent the question, you can put it in the chat as well. But I think it's about the community food center.
Yeah, so there's two. Well, I used to work at the Alex Community Food Center, and that's a space in Forest Lawn that people can access like groceries. So basically low cost groceries once a week, like fresh produce. They can also access meals and cooking programs. So learning how to cook and learning how to cook food from everywhere. So that would be one. Is the Alex Community Food Center. It's in Forest Lawn on 49th Street and 17th Ave. And then the other one that I did mention was Fresh Roots. And so Fresh Roots is a mobile food produce truck that travels to different parts of Calgary and sells food at an affordable cost, in particular fresh produce. And it's great. You can get a big bag of groceries that will cover you for the week for about $25. And it is run by a group of very dedicated and hardworking individuals who care a lot about food access and making sure that food is accessible to everybody, even if they can't drive or if there's no grocery store in their neighborhood. And it's called Fresh Roots.
Okay, hopefully that was right. Okay, awesome. So the next one is for, sorry, not this. Oh, the next one is community gardens are a great place to start. What are your thoughts on how to move beyond a traditional smaller garden space into one when more space can be accessed and more learning can be shared regularly? I can type that. That's for the academics as well. Or roots.
I think Saima and I can both speak about the CCIS, the Land of Dreams. I think the city of Calgary is also part of it. So there have, I think, was it 40 acre, quite a large space of the land that's so moving away from the smaller space of the community garden, it's more of the moving towards the farm. And so I think there is a possibility to activate, and this is an idea with Cesar as well, like maximizing the unused spaces that the city of Calgary has and turn them into more of the farming space where we can really maximize the knowledge of newcomers, also indigenous ways of growing food because they know how to grow in this condition. So, and maybe we can create space to collaborate between community and the university or community and the K-12 school system. Because there are lots of innovations that can happen when we think about how we can make the food sustainable to grow in the severe condition of Calgary. There are lots of knowledge that we need to bring from the science, engineering, mathematics. So I think if we centralize the food justice as a part of the curriculum for the education system, both in the K-12, but also in the higher education, in partnership with community agencies like TIES, CCIS, Center for Newcomers, I think we can move beyond the small, more dispersed community gardens to more structured and the systemic efforts.
Yeah, that was a great answer, Miwa. And I think just to add to that, I think it's necessary to move beyond those traditional small boxed garden spaces, because the reason that the Land of Dreams really came into fruition was because it was sort of a joke for all of the people who were coming here. They were like, I was a farmer back home and you're making me grow food in a 6 by 8 foot box. That's not enough space. And so not only is it not only is it a good idea, it's a necessary idea, because there's lots that we can learn and a lot of output, a lot of produce that can be grown for by these communities for their own communities, and maybe even for the broader Calgary community. I'll share another small story. Because this summer has been so hot, water has been a really hard resource to manage on the Land of Dreams. And, this is where learning from the people who have grown in drought conditions and have wisdom that they've brought from, their homelands of Syria or, other places in the Middle East, is that they know how to grow and they know what to grow, and they know how to save seed and support sort of continued relationship with the land and building a strong relationship with the land. So it's a great question. And I think it should be a very high priority item for people as we kind of try to think about spaces for farmers who are coming from other parts of the world. And often because because of the climate crisis or because of war. And so it's our job to make space for those farmers as well.
Definitely. And adding to that is that the accessibility is another issue. For example, Land of Dreams is located in Stony Trail and quite far. And currently the public transportation is not running to there, or it's really difficult to access. So how can the city make the transit more accessible to those places for newcomers who don't drive yet? Or what if we create the cycling path so that those who don't drive but who ride a bike can ride to the farm and get some exercise and farm. So I think this is an issue that needs a transdisciplinary problem solving. It's not just one solution that we will need, but we need multiple pieces moving together.
And Niwa, you also mentioned that there's some unused space in the city. And we saw this firsthand because we were walking around in some neighborhoods in Niwa, and I found a few spaces in Whitehorn that would be wonderful to, there are these community converging places where, there's foot traffic that connect, one side of the neighborhood to the other side of the neighborhood. But then there's some sort of like empty expanses that, could really benefit from, from gardens and in a community garden or something like that.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah. So that was a lot. There's a lot to think about, anyways, with community gardens and how we can set up more spaces, more farms, and I definitely do believe that a lot of collaboration with the indigenous would be very, very good and innovative for the future of growing culture. So we don't have a lot of time, but we do have one more question for the chefs. So for the chefs, do they prefer to grow the ingredients to cook the cuisines? If yes, what food do they generally grow? Oh, sorry, I think I can, you're muted.
Yeah, I like that concept from that farm to the table concept. But unfortunately for my side, the ingredients are very expensive. And I know that only lots of people can only pay for a certain amount, right? That they cannot afford me serving them organic food, right? We tried that we do that at Olive's Resto before. Only rich people can have it, right? They can afford it. And I try to do that too to my family, buying those local and organic food. But unfortunately, I cannot afford to do that or I cannot afford to buy that for my family. When I was in culinary school, I tried this tomato that they're growing at Safe Garden. Oh, the flavor was so amazing. Then I one time I was working in the senior homes. Then one of our special event, I bought a local tomato, a tomato from a local farmer.
For us in the University of Calgary, we have a big cabinet. We grow our own microgreens, different flavors of microgreens like the snow peas, and then different like mustard microgreens. And we have one more place we grow our own mushroom too. So to the university students, so that we can show them how the fresh food is, so that they could love to see the fresh food being served to them. Even the mushroom they see from the beginning, how we plant it, how we put it inside the cabinet. We have a black box inside where we grow the mushroom with the moisture content and temperature control, for them to teach them, like, if you want to grow the mushroom in your own house or in your own microgreens, you can buy this stuff and do it in your own house. So that we can integrate into their mind that fresh food is more better than buying a packaged food. That's the idea of Aramark working in the University of Calgary to integrate it to the new students when they come from different, because we get international students coming from different part of the world, and when they come and they see that this is our own initiative to help them to understand the Canadian culture, like, and to put into their mind that we too love fresh food rather than packaged food.
Yeah, awesome for that. Thank you to our wonderful panelists for having a very awesome Q&A and very productive Q&A. I will pass it now on to Jen.
Okay, so the purpose of our panel discussion is actually to kick off our own fundraising campaign. It's something that we spent all summer putting together, and we're finally nearly ready to launch it. So the research and program development department team here at TIES, we are aiming to raise funds to produce a collection of creative videos showcasing newcomers cooking various dishes and sharing their stories behind their recipes. And we actually have produced several of these videos in the past, and they can be found on our YouTube page. If you just search the Immigrant Education Society, and all of our past videos should be on there. But for this time around, we want to expand on these videos. And we also want to create a materialized cookbook with previous recipes that are from our previous videos. And we also want to include future recipes shared in the videos that we are aiming to produce. So I will pass it over to Baya, and she'll explain how and where you can support our project.
Thank you. So as you guys can see on the screen here, we have a Facebook page, a YouTube page, and we also have a Charity Village page. So the one showing on the iMac on the screen over there is basically a Charity Village page that we have not launched yet. We're still trying to sort some stuff, but we will be sending everyone a link on their emails for the Charity Village page once we have that finalized. In the meantime, you can check out our Facebook, which is at NCCYYC, and the official TIES Facebook, which is at TIES YYC, as well as our LinkedIn and as our YouTube as well. So this video will be recorded and we will upload it on our NCCYYC Facebook page with updates and probably future upcoming projects. Yeah, and I'll pass it on to Cesar for the closing remarks.
Well, yeah, once again, thank you so much to the panelists for sharing with us your thoughts and your ideas about all these issues and some on these topics and stuff. Really, it was a great and enlightening discussion. Thank you to members of the audience for coming to attend and asking some of their questions and just being present to hear some of the things that we had to say. Like Bea and Jen were mentioning, this is part of like this ongoing kind of campaign to try to raise more awareness about some of these topics that we have, and also to help support some of the efforts that TIES and our sort of partners are having to try to extend and try to build programming around these things, namely in particular the additions to the first set of cooking videos that we did a couple of years ago with the Alex Community Food Center. But yeah, like thanks again for coming. It was a wonderful discussion, and yeah, and I guess we'll leave it at that. Please keep an eye out for and stay in touch for maybe some subsequent events. And apart from that, we'll see you again, either in cyberspace or in person, hopefully. Soon.
Thank you everyone for joining.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Miwa. Thanks for coming. Thanks, Saima. Thanks, Kainat. Thanks, Peter and Mars.
Thanks, everyone.